Hey, welcome to YSR Shorts. A question I get a lot is what's probate? What is this probate thing? The first misconception that people say is, I have a will, I'm not going to probate. Oh, if you have a will, you're going to probate. Probate is to make sure that property that you owned during your lifetime, and we talked about this on a previous short on what's a will, is when you die, your assets don't know where to go. If they don't have a beneficiary, they don't know where to go. And a will is necessary, and the probate process is part of that. And probate's an interesting thing. It goes back to, I don't know, maybe 800 years ago, maybe longer, but definitely 800 years ago is 1215 AD is the lords of the manors of England forced the king to sign the Magna Carta. And I'm sorry, it's a history lesson. I love history. The Magna Carta, instituted what's called the rule of law. Is the king was absolute, but the king signed the Magna Carta saying the monarchy is not absolute. There's a the law is supreme, not the king, and that was gigantic. That was unprecedented. So at that prior to that point, technically the lords of the manors owned their manors and all of the servants and everything else, but the king kind of really owned everything. And that changed. And at some point, somebody was sitting there. Again, going back to Old English law, when the Lord of the Manor passed away, eldest son stepped in as Lord of the Manor. That happens today. Look at King Charles. I still call him Prince Charles all the time. It's King Charles. Why? He was the eldest son of Queen Elizabeth. That's how it works. Uh, is that's gone back millennia probably. At some point, one of the lords said, either I don't have a son or I don't want my eldest son to get it for whatever reason. I want this other person, whether it's another son, a daughter, a cousin, whatever it is. And they said, oh, we'll figure it. I got it. We'll write it. I'll write it down. So they sit there with their quill pen and they write this little big flowery thing. They fold it over, they seal it with their seal, and they set it there, and then they pass away. And the eldest son walks in to the father's room and looks at it and picks it up, and he says, oh, wow, that's great. And lights it on the nearest candle, and it burns up, and everybody just moves on. And he is now the Lord of the Manor. Nothing stopping him from doing so. That was the law of the land. That was the common law. And at some point, the Lord said, no, we own this, so we want some control. And you don't want to have that piece of paper or vellum at the time in your room where eldest son can come in. How are we going to fix this? Oh my gosh, how's this going to work? Wait, I've got it. We're going to take and we're going to do that same thing. We're going to the vellum. We're going to put what we want, called our last will and testament. We're going to seal it with our seal so everybody knows it's ours. They can prove that it's ours. And we're going to put it with the court. We're going to allow the courts to hold on to this because they are above everybody else. Nobody will mess with them. We're going to set them all there. And then when I pass away, everybody will kind of get on their horses and they'll ride into the city where the court is and sit down, and they'll open the will and read the will, and everybody can find out what's going on. Very much like the TV and movie trope from probably the 40s through the 80s of the reading of the will. It never happens. It never happens. The last movie I saw that had it was Four Brothers with Mark Wahlberg and Tyrese Gibson and them. And that was 1990 something. That was the last time I saw it in a movie. And it was like, that just never happens. You don't go to the lawyer's office to sit there and read it. But in 1300, you went to the court and the court opened it. The magistrate opened it, or the judge opened it, read it out, and then it was their job to make sure, or appoint somebody else to make sure, that all of those things were followed. Okay. And in 1300 England, it's a great process. That's an awesome process because it ensures that the Lord's decisions are followed through, that his wishes are followed through. In 2026 America, except for the fact that you don't file that will before you die, is your executor or personal representative files it after you pass away. It's the same process, and it is ridiculously slow. It is ridiculously public, it can be ridiculously expensive. It will cost you possibly tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the size of your estate and the complexity of your estate, to make sure that the assets go where they need to go. Probate is not a fun process. It's better than it was across the nation 20 or 25 years ago. There's been something that's been rolling for the last probably 30 years called the Unified Probate Code. It finally got to Massachusetts maybe a decade ago, and things are better, but it's a very public process. It's a very time-consuming process, 6 months to a year, maybe more, depending on the situation. And it's a very public process. So that's how probate works. If you have a will, you're going to probate. If you don't have a will, you're going to probate. And the worse than that is the state's going to decide who gets your assets. So don't do that. Make sure you have a will. We talked about that one already, but you want to make sure that you're aware of how probate works, because if you have sufficient assets, you want to try to avoid it. So if you have questions, jump down to the show notes. I'll see you next time. Stay safe out there.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Remember, the views expressed are not necessarily those of Successful Money Strategies. All content is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as an endorsement of any third party or their views, or as a solicitation or offer to sell securities or provide investment, tax, legal, or consulting services. We believe the information presented to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed for accuracy or completeness. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Hypothetical returns do not reflect actual trading and may not be indicative of the performance of any specific investment. Always consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Additional information, including management fees and expenses, is provided on our Form ADV Part 2, available upon request, or at the SEC's Investment Advisor Public Disclosure website, https://advisorinfo.sec.gov.